Hi Al. Okay, I tend not to use the correct metalang for this program because I've used several digitizing programs and they all have their own metalang. And of course they're all different. So you end up creating your own language if you wish. And that's what's happened in my case and in a lot of people's cases. A lot of us call the lines that you see connecting things thread trails, because that's what they are. And let me just show you. If I make a line and I enter that, I think I'm in, it's better. That's my first thread trail. That's the jump from the center of the hoop to the first stitch. There you have a little circle, and that marks the point where the tie stitches are made for the start of this line. Now if I then go and use a different tool, and I'll do it down here, I went to drag it then, forgetting that there's a snail trail, or rather a thread trail, or as the program calls it, connector, because that's what it is. It's connecting the end stitch to the first stitch with fresh air. That won't stitch on your machine. If you have a machine that has auto scissors, this shows it where it has to trim. Now I'm going to get rid of the hoop and I'm going to ask for needle points. Now there is a shortcut for that on the keyboard. I don't use keyboards. I'm going to turn the grid off as well so that we can see more clearly. And I have to blow this up. There we go. Those are my stitch penetrations, my needle penetrations, making my stitches. This circle marks the point where my first needle penetration will go. It will go forward, backwards, forward to lock that beginning in. This marks the end needle point, and that will go backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, stop. The auto scissors will go clip and cut it. If, as I had, you have a machine that doesn't have scissors, that's the point at which you have to stop your machine or pause it and cut the thread. Because if you don't, your hoop jumps to the next spot to put the first needle penetration in, and it drags behind it a thread trail. That's why we call it a thread trail. And what's happening is underneath your bobbin thread is being stretched, and on the top your top thread is being stretched in the needle because it's still attached to the fabric over here. And if this jump is too long, you run the risk of breaking a needle because your bobbin thread is stretching enormously, and so is your top thread, which combined can bend a needle. And it can bend a needle enough to make it strike the needle plate. Okay, these three dots, and you can see they're not all equally these are because I've given them a big enough gap, but they don't necessarily have to be this far apart. Tell the machine you have got to go from coordinate whatever to coordinate whatever. And you will do that with your needle up. You will raise your needle when this stitch is finished. The scissors will operate. You will keep that needle up in the air and you will jump to the next needle penetration, but you won't drop your needle. You will then jump again to the next needle penetration, where you will still keep your needle up. You will then jump to the next needle penetration, but you still are not allowed to drop your needle because this is a jump, and these three dots are to tell you, if you've got scissors, operate your scissors. Only the program reads the same as we do. It scans slightly ahead of what it's actually reading. It's actually reading this, but it's also scanning ahead, and it sees three travel up commands, so it cuts the thread there. Then it looks to see where the next needle penetration is, and it will simply move the hoop. There's no thread attached underneath, there's no thread attached on top. It will drop the needle in there. The thread trail is to show us that we're not making a good job of the digitizing because we're asking it to make trim stitches. If you're using a graphic and it is possible to run a travel line between the first object and the second object, because at a later stage another object is going to cover that. We run a run line and we connect it deliberately ourselves because we know it's going to be covered. So I might make a shape. Let's drop this down a bit. Enter that. There's my thread trail. But here I'm going to have a different colour, and it's going to be a square, we'll say. And I'll highlight that and we'll change the colour. Okay. So between there and there, instead of having a jump, which is what I've got, let's just move this one out of the way for a second. Instead of having that, I could have put in a run line, and it's not too late to do it now. So I blow this up and I look for my little triangle. It's not going to show it to me. Have I got 3 jump stitches? Aha! The reason it's not going to show it to me is all the way down here. So I need to move that as my end point and put it up here or over here. We'll take the shortest route. There's the end point. Now I can go and pick up my run line tool, lay a node in there, come up that line because it's connecting. I'm not quite certain where it's connecting to, so I'll just drop it into here onto one of these and then move that to have that finish. The jump line is now gone. It's replaced with a row of stitching, and because I know I'm going to have another object in there covering that, that's okay. Let's make this little square a bit smaller. I don't really want it eating up too much of the design. There we go. And that will be hidden. That travel line that I created will be hidden by this object. Now this object might not be created until quite a ways down the road in the design, but because I've already analysed my graphic and I can see where I can travel, because I know I'm going to be putting different coloured objects in, I can then plan to travel between my objects. Like this one, down to here. I could, if I highlight this line, just reshape him slightly, move him down, close him off, go and pick up the run line. Now I know I'm going to have this blue square here, so I can run a travel line down into there and up into my start point. Get in there, which is my empty circle, and then move that one up to where it needs to be. Tell that stop, click on the blue, and that one's hidden. Now I've got a small little jump here because I didn't see my start point for this one. I put it down there, so I go into that, I blow it up, there it is up there, and I move that up to that start point. And that eliminates that little teeny jump that existed from there where I put my connector, and it goes from this shape all the way up to there. So now in the red I have only got a start, 1. I haven't got another start in the red because it's one continuous movement now. And there's the end point. And then this is a colour change, and even though it shows a thread connector, we know that doesn't exist. and it won't stitch. It won't actually exist until the first needle penetration is made in this blue shape. That's why we have thread trails. It's to let us know our digitizing needs to be cleaned up a bit. We don't want to create all those tie stitches because they can hang our machine up. They make 3 or 4 very small stitches packed into a teeny area which creates a knot on the back, and the trim always leaves a bit of a tail. So you've got a bit of a tail of thread, then you've got this tight knot of stitches underneath your hoop. If you've got 2 objects coming very close together and you've got 2 of these very close together, you end up with anything from 8 to 10 little stitches in a teeny area, and that's enough to hang up your race, the hook on your race of your machine. And you don't want your machine to keep stitching, stop, trim, make those additional stitches, jump, make the tie-in stitches, stitch, stop, do the tie stitches, do the trim, jump to the start of the next one, do the tie stitches. That slows your machine down terrifically. It also makes the stitching out time far longer, and it's hard work on your pantograph because it's having to move the hoop in jerks instead of nice, clean, small movements from one coordinate to the next, to the next, to the next. It's going a long chunk, a long chunk. I think about it. Unnecessary wear and tear on your machine's pantograph mechanism. And if you want your machine to last forever, as I do, you get rid of all those unnecessary trims and tie stitches. Okay, that's it. I hope this helps you out and gives you an idea. Oh, and another thing, let's highlight the last one. I work in metric, I don't work in imperial, I can't think in imperial, and I don't want to have to think in fractions of an inch. I much prefer to work in metric, and I've only got to worry about this much. I haven't got to think, what's 0.017? I don't know, but I know what 0.4 is, 0.4 of a millimetre. That's the width of my thread. If you're using a 40 weight embroidery thread, that's the width of it, 0.4. And that's the default setting, but I generally stitch at around 4.3, 0.43 rather, to 0.45.